Okay, so we're going to get started. So welcome everybody. I wanted to begin by thanking everyone for tuning in to our conversation today. Powerful women in the business of sports. And as all of you know, through my growing up with my brothers, to coaches and mentors that I've had along the way, I've just been obsessed about the stories behind the people who get not just to the 1%, but get into the 1% of the 1% of high performers. And so today we're just super blessed to have this amazing panel of really talented women in the business of sports with us. And so I'll briefly introduce names, and then we're going to take a second to introduce ourselves and share a little bit about our unique story and what you're up to today before we get started. So we have Danielle Martin today, Janelle Miller, and Manon Rheaume. And so Danielle, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. So my name's Danielle, and I grew up in New Jersey. At a very young age, I started training in classical ballet, trained all through high school, and went to Butler University, Jordan College of the Fine Arts, and thought that I would be dancing professionally until I pretty much couldn't walk. But that really wasn't the case. I got out of college and I danced with American Repertory Ballet for about one season, and that's kind of where my ballet career ended. And I started to venture into different avenues of my life. I opened a business, and then after opening a business, I went into yoga. And now that's really my main focus is yoga for athletes. And with the background of classical ballet, I've worked with my body my whole life just as an athlete would. And I also am a real estate agent. So there's two hats I wear mainly, but I think the bond between both of them is trust. I have athletes who trust me with their body, and then I have people trusting me with one of the biggest decisions they have to make in their life. So that's where I am now.
Yeah, it's super awesome to hear that. Even today you have various passions, and you're really getting to enjoy all of them. So Thanks for that, Danielle. Janelle.
Yeah, I'm Janelle Miller. I grew up in Michigan. I played soccer my whole life, ended up going to Central Michigan University. And there, sports was a big part of my life, and they happened to have an undergrad degree in sports management. Didn't really know what I wanted to do in sports. Hockey was my favorite sport at the time. I grew up a huge Red Wings fan, and the Chicago Blackhawks had posted they were looking for an unpaid intern in Chicago. For some reason, I took that, and it led to a full-time position with the Blackhawks. I was there through their first Stanley Cup, this huge turnaround for the team, new ownership. And with that, I started, meeting a bunch of the agents, going to the NHL drafts. And I was like, I think that's what I want to do. Not so much work on the team side, but I want to be an agent. And still at that point, didn't really know what that meant. And I ended up working for IMG, which then also went under new ownership and became WME IMG. And there I started building the athletes' brands. So at the Blackhawks, I was working more on building the team brand. And at WME IMG, I loved working on building the athletes' brand. What does that mean? Doing their marketing and endorsement deals when they're on commercials, on TV, really anything off the field for them. And then from there, I just recently moved to ISE, Independent Sports and Entertainment. And I'm doing the same thing over here with NHL, NBA, MLB guys, both active and retired.
Yeah, and I loved watching this year's NFL draft. It's so amazing to me how small the world is. I'm watching the draft, and I have one of my closest friends who's a great mentor, just a great influence in my life, Ben Newman, who'll be a panelist on our very next one in 2 weeks from today. And Ben Newman is sending me a text about a young man that had just gotten drafted, and he just a very, very talented young man. He sends me the text, and Samantha sends me a note and says, oh, one of Janelle's friends that she works with just got drafted. And it was the same young man. Yeah. And Janelle and Ben had not met before. And so again, it's just so interesting to me always how when you're in that space of the 1% of the 1% helping and serving people and performing at a high level, It's just such a blessing to see how small that world really becomes. And so you and Ben have connected since then, right, Janelle?
Yes, we have. He's great. Thank you as always for your introductions. And we're actually talking again tomorrow. So
yeah, that's wonderful. That was such a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Manon.
Manon Rheaume. I'm the first and only female to play in the NHL. I went to the Olympics in '98, won the silver medal there, won 2 gold medals with Team Canada at the World Championship. Now I'm working for the youth hockey program for the Detroit Red Wings, Little Caesar. I'm director of girls hockey. I also coach a girls team here, and I'm doing speaking engagement. I like to be able to inspire people with my story, and that's something I've been really enjoying.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Manon. And Manon wore a shirt that's very near and dear to my heart. And it's the brand of an all-female, vision influenced, created and operated wealth management and insurance firm here based out of the great state of Michigan, the Collective Financial Group. And it's headed up by a dear friend of mine, Marty McLeish, and Manon, as well as Gina Coleman and my wife, Samantha, who's definitely the top performer in our family. They've been just a great help to get the collective up and launched, effective the end of this January. And so they're just doing great work here based out of the Midwest. And Manon, it's a blessing to have you as a friend and an influence to that organization. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I want to just take a second. You know, today's conversation is really inspired by visions like that, visions of a collective financial group, visions of what I see every day when I wake up and I look at my beautiful 12-year-old daughter, Ava Jade Amezcua, and I think about how she might see the world. And if she's aware of just the infinite abundance of opportunity and blessings that exist out there for her, if she chooses to put in the hard work and work towards her vision and her dreams. And so today's conversation is inspired by that. It's dedicated to that. And to all the folks in the world who have their own Danielle, Janelle, Manons, and my Ava, this one's for you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So we've had so much interaction since our last panel from viewers. And Leslie Bailey, as well as a dear friend of mine, Judy Hoberman, almost sent the exact same question in for today to kick us off. And they said, hey, would you mind asking Manon and Janelle, would you mind asking them what's one lesson that they learned from their time in athletics and their experiences around sports that has served them well in business and in their personal life? And Manon, why don't we begin with you?
You know, the one thing that I learned is to worry about the things that you can control. I think as an athlete, you realize that really early on that a lot of things you cannot control. So instead of getting frustrated with those things, to just worry about the things you can control. And I continue to do that in life. Like, for example, this situation right now, we cannot control when we're going to go back to somewhat normal or go back to work or things to reopen. And I choose to, okay, what can I do with my time during this time? And how can I be productive? And instead of getting frustrated that we're not doing the normal thing right now.
Thank you for sharing that. Janelle.
I would say one thing I learned that still serves me today is mental toughness. You know, when you're growing up playing sports, you're not winning every game. You're not playing well every game. And you have to have that mental toughness to continue to have a positive mindset, to continue to be a positive teammate for those around you, you know, and to, you know, just be positive and be intentional, I think, with your thoughts. So mental toughness is something that still serves me well today. And I think it's a good lesson for everyone.
Yeah, you know, that, Janelle, that really resonates with me. I speak to Ava and Atlas almost every single day about having volcanic grit. And just yesterday, my son, Atlas, I love this little boy to pieces. He's 10 years old. He got a new bike 2 weeks ago, a little mongoose, and it's one of those like trickster bikes. I was horrible on a bike. I'm gonna get my son this great bike, teach him how to do tricks and all these other things. Well, yesterday he's cruising around the neighborhood as I'm on a call in the basement in our home, and Samantha's out there with Ava and Atlas, and he's cruising, and he like tries to hop a curb, and he has his first wipeout. Both arms, both knees, his side, everything is scraped, bleeding. And you know what? Samantha and Ava told me that after a moment of probably being just like kind of shocked, he hopped up and started walking back about 1.5 blocks to the house. And I was so proud. I just think in general, I think that sometimes we run so quickly to save everyone from everything that there's an opportunity for them to identify their relationship with mental toughness. And wherever that is, that's good. It's for them. It's for them to choose. I do think that there's times where, in general, I think our society is running a little low on the grit fuel tank. And so we're all about volcanic grit and bouncing back to what we said we would do. This morning he woke up, he said, I want to get on my bike again.
Love that.
Good job, Atlas. So, Danielle, tell us about something that you wish you had learned earlier on in life that would be benefiting you today.
Yeah, I think 2 things come to mind. One is that rest is not a weakness, and that rest doesn't mean you're a couch potato. I think that if I kind of stepped back for a few moments, I'm like 100% all in type of person. And with ballet especially, I think if I took more moments of rest and turned it into rejuvenation, my career would have lasted longer. Because I thought harder I go, I'm just going to barrel through. I'm going to show up injured. I'm going to work through it injured. No one's going to see me, down or soft or anything like that. I didn't miss a minute. I was there early. I was all in. And I think I thought I was doing the right thing and proving something. But in return, I wasn't allowing my body and my mind to heal, to refill my tank, so I can show up stronger the next day. So something I would try to get the word out, that rest is not a weakness. It's not a couch potato. It can be super active while recovering, but it will elongate, what you want to do, whether that's a physical thing or in business.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that one. I think probably almost every viewer that can really resonate and relate with that. Janelle, what's one thing?
One thing I wish I would have learned when I was younger, or learned earlier, was that to embrace change. Change is growth. Change is good, and not to be so afraid of it. There's sometimes where you're forced to make a change that you don't want to make. You're scared, but it forces you to pivot, and that's so important in life in general, in business, learning how to pivot, learn how to change. I wish I wasn't so afraid when I was younger to make the change to Chicago. Like, I jumped up and left to Chicago, didn't know a soul here. And I was scared about it. And looking back, I'm like, gosh, I wish I wasn't so scared. I mean, everything worked out, and it worked out the way it should. And I'm here 12, 13 years later, and in a job I absolutely love, in a city I love. So, embrace change. You're going to grow from it. It can force you to take risks that are going to be okay in the end, and maybe even better.
Yeah, I really appreciate when you shared that. And what it makes me think of is that one time early on in my career, a mentor of mine shared, anytime there's dramatic or traumatic change, ask yourself what's happening, why is it happening, and how does this really impact you? And if you can do that and write that out, it gives you an opportunity to understand the situation from 360 degrees. And then you can more intelligently and intentionally react and respond to the moment. So really appreciate you sharing that. Thanks so much, Janelle. So I want to take this next question to all 3 of you, and we'll go Manon, Janelle, Danielle, okay? Tell our viewers about a time where you experienced great adversity. And if there was someone specific that was there to help you through it, why don't you acknowledge that person and share that?
Actually, I faced so many times great adversity being the only female playing in a male sports. When I was younger, no other girls was playing hockey, and a lot of coaches didn't want a girl on the team. And my dad, I think that what he did is he knew that they didn't want a girl on the highest level, but I wanted to go tryouts. And he didn't tell me that they would not take me no matter how good I was or not good enough. Or so he let me tryouts, and I went to tryouts, and for 4 years in a row, I got caught. Not knowing that it's not because of my talent, but it was because I was a girl. And but every time I got caught, I want to prove people wrong, so I work harder, and that allowed me to one day, after 4 years of getting caught for the highest level, made the AA team. And I think I owe him everything, because I think today's world, as parents, we always want to protect our kids. We don't want them to face failure or rejection. I see that as a coach in hockey. Parents want to know if their kid's going to make the team before tryouts because they're afraid of the reaction of their kids. But truthfully, for me, that helped me to make it to where I made it, the fact that I fell so many times when I was younger.
Yeah, Manon, I so enjoyed when you said how parents, they want to know if the child's on the team before they even try out. Hey, guilty. Guilty. But share a little bit more. But no, I told you when I first met you, I immediately went online and I Googled you and I watched almost 2 hours of video about your story. Can you tell me a little bit more, though, maybe about the relationship that your brothers played in your upbringing and your love for hockey?
Yeah, when I was younger, no girls were playing hockey. So every time they asked me to play with them, they were really using me as a target, because my dad used to do this ice rink in the backyard, and they were putting me in net, and they were practicing their shots on me. So I was just a target for them. And one day my dad was at the dinner table and he told my mom, I need a goalie for the tournament this weekend. None of the kids show any interest of playing goalie, and I don't know which kids I'm going to choose, because I know I'm going to disappoint them by choosing them. So I told my dad, why not me? I do it with my brother all the time in the backyard, and that's how I got started.
Yeah, I love that story, and I'm so glad you shared that one. That was the one I was looking for. It's just so special to hear how at such an early age you already had the courage and confidence to just say, hey, I'm ready. And so that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Janelle.
The first thing that comes to mind, and I was a little hesitant on if I should be bringing this up. I didn't want to, rock the boat, talk about a controversial topic. I also didn't want to come across as like, a big feminist. But I think that's even more of the reason why I wanted to bring it up today. And it's just the simple fact of being a female in a male-dominated industry. Not all women face this. However, it's not just like the gender pay gap of women are making 79 cents to the dollar in same positions that men are holding. It's also, two other examples are like having a seat at the table. Sometimes as a female, I've been made to feel in my life as, oh, is she just there because they need a female there? They need diversity, and that's why she's there. Not because of the hard work and that I have the ability to be there, but more of, oh, they need some diversity, whether it's in the company, in a meeting. And then, even take a look at the Oscars example. In the entertainment industry, male dominated. There's no female directors that were nominated. It caused a big stir. If female directors get nominated next year, are people going to think, oh, it's just because they needed to have a female on here? And that's unfortunate, because you're not looking at her ability, and she actually directed a great movie. And then just briefly, the other thing that I've come across personally is Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, wrote a great book called Lean In. Manny, I know you're a book reader. And in it, she brought up something that I didn't even realize I had faced until she actually brought it up in her book. And this was that men have qualities that seem to be essential for successful leadership: being assertive, being aggressive, being opinionated. When people look at a man as a leader, that's like essential for being a great leader. However, when females have the same exact traits, there's negative connotations. She's bossy, she's pushy, she's too aggressive. And again, I'd never really took the time to think about that until I read this in Cheryl's book. And I was like, that's actually been true in my life. It's like, how come we have the same qualities and being type A is great for a man, but sometimes as a woman in business, it's not so great. You get viewed as negatively and you kind of hold yourself back. You're like, oh, well, I don't want to be looked at in that light. And, the same is why I didn't necessarily want to bring this up. I don't want people to think a certain way. I don't know who's watching, but with everyone who's watching, I'm sure there's younger females, Ava's watching, my other little sister, Romy's watching right now. And it's like, I do think it's healthy to have these conversations. And I think it's important to acknowledge this and bring it up, that it still is an issue that, we're facing today.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because, being with a really, really talented woman like Samantha to try to have a family and raise a family and serve our business and our employees and our strategic partners and clients, I have found it to be just unbelievably invaluable to probably a lot of the gaps and shortcomings I have, that Samantha is reflective of the profile that you just shared. And I think that's probably where the relationship between you and Samantha is really just bonded and special and unique. What would you say, though? What would you say to that younger generation that might not be mentally and emotionally ready for those environments and those moments? What might you share with them to just remind themselves up, or to say to themselves when they're in those moments of adversity that you think would be helpful?
I think it goes back to what we discussed earlier on, how sports has prepared me to have mental toughness. Constantly believe in yourself and have an opinion, and don't be afraid to share it. People are always going to have an opinion of your opinion, but if this is your truth and what you hold, it's like, just share it, be open. And if people are going to value that, then that's great. And it's going to take you far. And if they don't, I hate to sound cliche, but it's their loss if they don't see that as being a powerful trait. And again, not all females face this, and hopefully, things are changing. Not all companies are this way. Not all men are this way, obviously. So I'm hoping that for the younger generation, it's going to change, but it's still going to be something they're going to have to deal with. So instead of having it be an elephant in the room and not talking about it because you're nervous of what other people might think of you, have open, honest discussions. That's what I would say to them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing that. Probably none of this is really just that easy to talk about, but I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. Thanks for sharing that, Janelle. So Danielle, a moment of adversity, a really significant one that stands out in your mind, and if there was anybody that really stood out as a great champion and advocate to you at that time, please share that.
Yes. So when I finished my ballet career, I pretty much was rolling around, didn't have the identity of a ballet dancer anymore, wasn't sure where I was going. My degree was in ballet. I didn't want to be in the ballet world. So I knew I had to figure out the next step. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in my apartment, literally doing nothing. And my mom texted me, she goes, "You should open a franchise." First, I had to Google what a franchise was. I mean, I was in a ballet bubble. I was not venturing out of my circle. So I looked it up, and it was in the paint and sip industry where you paint and drink. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I flew to the corporate office, and I was all in at this point. I had no clue what I was getting myself into, but I had confidence in what I had been through in my ballet world. I knew my work ethic. I knew I would be able to learn it. And I'm in my head, I'm like, nothing is harder than what I've just been through my whole life. So when I got there, someone in the corporate office, she wasn't excited to see my young face. I think she was very concerned that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And of course I didn't tell her, yes, you're correct. I probably looked 15 at the time. And I could tell she was highly concerned that one of these locations was going to be in my hands. And I was the first in New Jersey to open. And I was the youngest franchisee. It was over 300 units across the US. So it was one of those moments when she was kind of talking to me, kind of concerned that I wish I had prepared what to say, but I really just kind of awkwardly smiled and laughed and was like, yeah, I'm 22, yeah. But in my head, I was like, I'm gonna show, I'm gonna perform and show. So when I got back to New Jersey, I ended up receiving an award for Rookie of the Year. I was the fastest growing franchise in the US out of all the units across the nation, becoming one of the top franchisees. And I opened my second store within my first 6 months of running and operating my first. I had over 400 customers coming through between Friday and Sunday. And I was so busy opening my second store that when the award ceremony happened with, she's a part of that, I had to write an email and say, listen, I am so busy. I cannot come to accept my award. You can send it in the mail. I really appreciate it. And I did end up going back there for a conference after I owned multiple locations, and she apologized. And I wasn't looking for an apology, but it was a really pivotal moment for me because that voice could have made me fold. And I could have been like, yeah, what the heck am I doing here? Get me out of here. This is very out of my comfort zone. But instead I stepped in, I leaned into this discomfort, and that voice fueled me instead of patting me down. And I know that she was coming just from a concerned motherly place. She told me she had children my age, and she was probably trying to envision her children. And I just knew what I had come from with ballet and what I had been through. So I just kind of shoved that into the business world and made it work. So yeah, I think my background with ballet was more the voice than anyone else. I'm very fortunate to have a very strong foundation and support system that those voices were in there too. But it was a pretty cool moment for me.
Yeah, you know what? I think one thing I really enjoyed about hearing all three of your examples and your stories and experiences was, it's telling someone that they can't do something is not really a gender-specific plague. I mean, and I just think back, I've said it so many times, as a little boy, I thought I was going to be Batman, a middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears, or a businessman. And the third one is the last one I've got a shot at, and I'm working at it. And I'll tell you, how many times do we unintentionally limit our children's beliefs of what they can accomplish simply based on our own sort of frustrations with maybe our choices, our path, our experiences, and or our missed opportunities. And I love that. I love that you stayed the course on what you knew was right. And really all three of you have. And so I really enjoyed hearing those experiences. Thanks for sharing those. So we've got questions coming in. And Manon, look, this one's for you. What discipline do you attribute to your life in athletics, in hockey, that has most contributed to your success off the ice?
I would say my work ethic. In hockey, obviously I was always the first one on the ice, always the last one leaving the ice. And I didn't fit the mold of what a professional goalie should look like. I was smaller than all the guys out there. I speak French, which was really hard when the coach was explaining a drill or something like this. I didn't understand all of it. So I didn't fit the mold of what a goalie should look like. But I worked really hard and I was mentally strong. And those are the things that really helped me later in life. And when I coach my young girls in hockey, I said, if two things to remember from me, work ethic and respect will take you far in sports and in life.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And look, I'm going to do something really awkward and unplanned, but you just made me think of, so since I moved to Michigan, I didn't really follow a lot of Michigan sports. I followed Big Ten. My business partner in the Podium Group Risk Management is Paul Davis, who played for Coach Izzo. And through that relationship, I've met so many Spartans, Matt Ishbia, David Thomas, the coaches there, Coach Izzo, and most recent, a young man named Kyle. And I'm not going to say his last name because it's too early, but I've fallen in love with what I see of this young man. And all of those stories are stories of hard work, just like unflinching commitment to the hard work, and all of the greatness that Spartan Nation and Spartan country represents is hard work. And Coach Mel Tucker joining Spartan Nation this year to lead the football team inspired me to buy these. And yes, I wear these with a suit, white shirt and tie, coach. So super excited to wear those when I come on campus to cheer the team on. And I don't know why I just did that, but I felt like it talked about hard work. So let's take this back to all three of you. Talk to me about your relationship with failure. And let's start with Danielle.
Sure. So just hearing the word failure kind of like makes my soul cringe a little bit because the word has so much negativity around it and this is something that I wish I had practiced and knew earlier on in my life, is that the journey, the ups and the downs, it's part of going up towards what you want. Without the lows, you won't go up, right? So what we're calling a failure is, what if we renamed it to be a dip, right? A dip in our journey. It's what's kind of pushing you along to the spot you're supposed to be in. So that failure was kind of just like, it's like a dead end, and then you have to back up and find the next avenue. So my relationship with failure years ago as a ballet dancer was not great. I think if I had a stronger relationship and a clarity there, I would have been able to perform better because I wasn't so worried. It was like a daunting thing to fail. Now I look at it so differently. My perspective has changed so much that it really makes your being feel lighter. Like you can really explore what you like, what conversations with this person and that person. Is this working? Maybe it's not working. Does that feel right to you? So I think just a change in perspective of the word is such a game changer. And the earlier you can start to dabble into that, whether you're an athlete, a parent, whatever you may be, I think is huge. So my relationship with failure has changed tremendously. And, I wish I had those tools earlier on.
Thanks for sharing that. Janelle.
I agree with Danielle, and I don't look at it as a failure, like the definition of failure. Failure isn't final. You don't just fail at something and then never get to do something ever again in life. Look at it as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to change how you do it the next time. In high school, if you fail a test, or college, even if you fail a class, you can retake it. Like there's always a chance to do it over, do it differently, as long as you're learning from it. It really is, you can use it as an opportunity to grow and to change. So that's my relationship with failure now. It's obviously easier said than done, but that's how you should do it. It's the only way to go up.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Failure is never final. It doesn't have to be. Manon.
I learned early on, for me, failure, I had a great relationship with failure early on. I think it's from my dad, that first night after I told him, why not me playing goalie? Since I do it with my brother all the time, he took me down in the basement, I put equipment on, and after a few shots, one time I received one on my shoulder, and it hurt, and I went down, and I started complaining about it, and my dad looked at me, and he said, get used to it. He said, if you want to do netting, it's not going to work. It's not going to hurt. But if you want to play hockey, sometimes the puck's going to hurt. So get used to it. And that moment, I knew that if I wanted to play hockey with the boys, that I'm going to need to be strong. And I approach every failure the same way. So if I got cut from the team, if I face adversity, I was remembering my dad saying to me, get used to it. And in my mind, that was my trigger point to change my mindset and said, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I was able to handle all those adversity and failure.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And as we've gotten to know each other, Manon, I know you've shared many times how many times you really experienced failure since you were a little girl because of the profession that you chose. And so I've also enjoyed hearing about your success leading youth hockey sports here in the greater Detroit market in Michigan. And we're just super thankful for folks like you who are influencing our children to play such a great sport. So thank you for that. Question. This is for Danielle. Is there a chapter after the one that you're writing right now to the book of your life? And if there is, what is that chapter?
Yeah, I think no matter what, there's going to be a chapter. So I think if you sit back and let the day roll along, that's your chapter. And then I think you can also kind of put pen to paper. which I've always done since I was a kid. And I think just dream bigger, get your goals bigger. Don't be nervous to write down. I felt personally myself even felt like awkward writing my own goal down. And I actually had a conversation with Janelle, and I spoke some of my dreams that I've never spoken before out loud. And I told her, I was like, I feel really weird doing this, but I'm going to speak it. So I think, the chapter, make it bigger. And even if you fall a little bit shorter than you thought, you're still really, making your chapter exciting. And for me, I really want to get in contact and make a difference in as many athletes' lives as I can, on and off, in their arena or outside of it, from the mental health aspect of rejuvenating the body and the mind, that thing that I was missing in my ballet career. So my next chapter is really going to focus on that, and maybe even get into with a few teams that I can really start building these relationships with players that they feel like, ooh, this is the person I can go to get my mind and body back on track.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That will be a great chapter, and I'm glad that you have a vision for that, and that I'm sure you'll be ready when that time comes. Congratulations. So I continue to get all these questions. So I don't know if anybody knows, but I'm new to this whole webinar podcast thing. And so my phone keeps blowing up with all these great questions. I'm so excited. And the most recent one, I'm not playing favoritism here, but my business partner, Paul Davis, is at the bottom of my phone right now. And so Paul Davis wants to know, and he wants to hear from each of you. Was there a moment in your careers when you reached a goal that you had in your mind's eye where you said, this is exactly why I chose that path, and I put in the long hours, and I did all the work that I did in the dark when nobody was watching or celebrating me? Is there a moment when that happened? And tell us about that. And let's start with Janelle.
I was smiling as you were asking that question, because there definitely is. I mean, that moment's right now. I've hit them quite a few times in my life. I constantly set goals for myself ever since I was younger. First it was like, oh, I want to play on the best travel soccer team, and did that. And then I want to, play in high school, and, I want to work in sports just as a general blanket goal. And I did that. And then I want to work for an NHL team. And then we won a Stanley Cup with them. And then it was, okay, I want to pivot, and now I want to be an agent. And then I went on and did that. So pretty much right now in my life is the goal I hit. I wanted to be a sports agent even before I knew what that exactly meant, other than Jerry Maguire or the movie Entourage. I really didn't even know what goal I was setting for myself. And now that I'm in it, I'm looking around as I'm dealing with all of these, greats Wayne Gretzky, or, rookies like Henry Ruggs, who Ben knows. It's wow, I'm actually in where I wanted to be. I'm in the exact position that I worked so hard for. And it's also exciting because it gives me an opportunity to set another goal now. What's the next goal I'm going to set? Because I've reached this one, and now it just gives me hope for the future. What else can I be doing?
That's awesome. Well, take time to, and I'm sure you have, right? Because you're a pretty special person, but make sure you take time to celebrate the fact that you're here and really enjoy it for every bit that it's worth. Manon, can you share a time?
Making the Olympic team. Even if playing in the NHL was one of the most amazing thing I did, it was not a goal of mine because I never saw a girl playing in the NHL before, so I didn't think it was possible. But the Olympics, I was with the women's national team, so that was something possible and reachable. And the year prior to the Olympics, the last World Championship in '97, I got cut from the national team. I had my best pro year with the guys, and they thought that in the national team we were getting together a week prior to the World Championship, and they felt my timing was off. The male game was a lot faster, the shot was faster, and they felt my timing was off, and they cut me from the team. So at that point, the Olympic was the following year. A lot of people said the same team in '97 is going to be an Olympic in '98. And a lot of people thought I would never make it to the Olympics. So again, that was another adversity, failure. But I used the same thing that I use all my life. And I said, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. So I worked so hard that summer. I totally changed my preparation and my mindset. And when I show up at camp, I show up at camp like I'm not on this team and I need to make this team. And it was really amazing because making the national team back then, our camp was like from August to December. So you were trying out for all those months, and along the way they were cutting players, and you never know if you're going to get cut or they're going to keep you. And right prior to Christmas they announced the team. So it was a very long, stressful training camp, but when I made the team, it was just all worth it.
What a great story. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Manon. Danielle.
Yeah, I think this quarantine period has kind of changed the game for me a little bit, because there's a little bit of a stigma around what yoga is. And I think there are barriers that have already been knocked down in the sports world with yoga kind of intermingling. But really these past few years, I've been trying to knock down doors and get people to just give my class a shot. If you take my class and have this experience, you know, that'll open the door for me. And I think the aha moments of like my work has paid off is when I get a message from an athlete that's just like, hey, I really am feeling better. Wow, I've never felt this good. Or my back that's been bothering me for 5 years is finally feeling better, you know, after consistency taking yoga for athletes classes during quarantine virtually. But it's the small moments for me right now that even like these conversations, to be able to start to get yoga for athletes more heard and to the forefront of conversations is so exciting to me, because this has been a journey of trying to get athletes to give it a shot. And I'm starting to see the turn now where instead of just me reaching out, now I have athletes reaching out to me. So it tells it all that there's other athletes spreading the word that, hey, this is really helping me out. You might want to contact her. So that's been those little moments for me during this time.
Yeah, and congratulations on that, right? I mean, we met from a distance some time ago when you and Samantha had first connected. And so I've been following from a distance along the way, and it's been really exciting. And obviously, I'm certain very rewarding to you personally to see just the enormous amount of outreach that you're receiving today from amateur and professional athletes across the country. And so, you know, our good friends from the Detroit Pistons are on and representing in a big way on today's webinar and podcast. So one, I want to give them a shout out and say thank you for continuing to put out great content right now when we're all wishing we were seeing the playoffs. But number two, so that the folks on that team, and I've recently connected with Langston, they know that Danielle Martin's here and she could be a great resource. So I'm glad that you shared that. Yeah. So we're going to move into the speed round because we're going to be wrapping up in about 10 minutes. And so I want to fire off a few of these questions. And so all I'm asking, and my guys last week, right, 2 weeks ago, I had on personal friends of mine. And of course, their responses were like 10 minutes long. So this is the speed round. And what speed means is speed. So brevity is king here. And so I'm looking to get through this really quick because I want to ask them all. And so let's start with, what is the one thing you're working on personally or professionally that has you the most excited right now? Manon.
Inspire people with my story through my speaking engagement, children's book that's coming out, and a movie that's been made.
Yeah, congratulate. All three of those are just mind-blowing. I'm just so excited for you. Janelle.
Recruiting. Started a new position at a new company actually in quarantine, which was very weird. And it's trying to help build up their NFL, NBA, MLB roster. So recruiting, getting out there, meeting new athletes, bringing them over for marketing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And listen, the war for talent never sleeps. The war for talent never sleeps. So to all my friends that are on today or will listen to this later on associated with the NFL and the MLB and NBA, please reach out to Janelle. She's just wonderful and someone that you absolutely need to know. Danielle.
Yeah, just this networking of each time an athlete or a team or a coach or anyone reaches out to me, I'm like, yes, another person that we get to show what yoga is all about and change the game for them on, you know, the mental aspect of it so they can bring it into their life and their game.
I love this. And so let's move to the next one. What is the best book you've read in the last 6 months? And describe it with one word.
The Inner Game of Tennis, Mindset.
Love it. Janelle.
It'll always be Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg and Empowering.
Danielle.
Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. I would say Discomfort.
I'm so obsessed with her and Mel Robbins. It's ridiculous. I'm so obsessed. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. In one sentence, in same order, in one sentence, what is your best advice to current student athletes?
You will face adversity in your sports and for the rest of your life. So get used to it and change your mindset.
Janelle.
Mine's very brief. Keep going.
Danielle.
Mine would be start to protect your inner environment.
Okay, you have to expand on that because I loved it when you shared that with me the first time.
Yeah, I think one of the foundational things that I bring up in my yoga classes, you have, even in the beginning of class, we call it sacred space. It's kind of, you set the tone for class. And it's like a bubble of this sacred space you have around you. And I think even for younger children in sports or athletics of any kind, it's harder for them to protect their inner environment because they feel like the power person is the coach who they're supposed to listen to. And as you grow older, you really have to start to build this sacred space, like a bubble around you. This is your internal environment, and you choose the voices that come in and out of it. You choose who's in and out of your sacred space and circle in your mind. And when you can start to protect that, no matter how extreme your external environment gets, your wall is so strong that nothing can get in unless you allow it to. So I think that's where that stems from, with the internal environment, really protecting it.
Thanks for sharing that. Last speed round question, then I think I'm going to go to one or two from our listeners. My phone is going crazy. If you could have a 1 hour conversation with one professional athlete, living or deceased, who would it be and why?
I would say Tom Brady. I've never been a huge football fan, but the last few years I watched more football. And I just love his story that in college he had to battle to be the starter quarterback, and he was a 6th round draft pick. Nobody thought that he would become the players that he become, and now he's probably going to be like the greatest quarterback ever played the game. So sometimes you go along the way, you take different paths, but you can still be successful even if you're not the number one at everything you do.
Awesome. Janelle.
This is hard because I've been so fortunate to meet a lot of professional athletes.
You're gonna get in trouble right now.
So, I mean, I've had conversations with Michael Jordan and, Wayne Gretzky and oh man, I'm going to have to be selfish here. This is so weird, and say Pavel Datsyuk, who used to be on the Red Wings, only because I grew up watching him and he, in a weird way, inspired me to I don't know, just keep going at my sport. He was so quiet and he was so humble, but he was so good. And I loved that humbleness about him. And he wasn't one of those loud, show off athletes. He just went out, did his job, did it well. And that's the one person I've never gotten to meet in the professional sports world that I really wanted to. So I'm going to say Pavel Datsyuk.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Danielle.
Yeah, I would have to say Brandon Brooks, who plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, which I'm a Phillies fan. I'm right near Philly. Last season, there was a lot of speak about his anxiety, and he was throwing up on the sidelines, and he missed a game because of his panic attacks. And I would love to sit and have a conversation with him. He has a lot of YouTube videos and things being interviewed about how, he doesn't look at it as he's not ashamed of having panic attacks or this level of anxiety. And he said, one of the things he said in his clip was, you'd be surprised how many guys on the team are suffering as well. His just was physical, so the cameras caught it. So, and that's the yoga practice. So I wonder what he does to help himself. And, you know, I really think yoga could be beneficial. So I'd love to sit with him.
Thanks for sharing that. I loved each one of those. And so my dear friend, Kristen Andre, Andree, if you don't know her, you need to know her. You can find her anywhere. Just Google her. She is a performance coach to some of the top people in business. She does a ton of work within our industry, and somebody that I've learned a great deal from and I admire greatly. She sends me a question. I love it. Tell our viewers, because we have an unbelievable turnout of male representation on this call as well, looking to learn, looking to grow, looking to get better. Tell our viewers, specifically the men in the organizations out there across the country that are in roles of being a teammate, a servant leader, or someone reporting up into a female. Tell us what men can do to create an environment that's dynamically collaborative and allows us to reach our true potential as a team and as an organization. Manon.
I would say, like any team, you need to find the strength of everyone, and female or male, everyone has strength, and utilize those strengths, and that make you successful as a group.
Thank you. Janelle.
Kind of going back to what I said earlier is, don't bring females on in roles just because you need diversity or a female. Bring people in to sit at the table in meetings that deserve to be there, whether it's male or female. You know, and empower both males and females equally, and have them have a seat at the table when they deserve it.
Danielle.
Yeah, I think something I also learned when I was running a business is, don't be scared to hire people who are better than you, especially in different aspects. Sometimes that can be intimidating to bring someone on board that is you feel is stronger in different aspects, but that's really what makes a really strong team. And I think also, you know, each individual is so different. So sometimes you have to meet people where they are, and everyone reacts differently from the way you speak to them, how you handle certain conversations. Some things don't resonate well in certain regard of how you speak. So I think to meet people where they are, and don't be scared to hire people who are a little bit stronger than you in some regard.
I love that. And you know, when you were answering that question, I scrolled through all the questions, and there was one from Samantha, and I think it piggybacks that really well. So very quickly, because we're running out of time, if you find yourself in a situation where you know you're not being treated fairly, how do you respond to that? What might you say? Danielle.
Yeah, I think this comes back to your inner environment. You know, your time is so valuable. I like to figure out what's the source of where is that coming from? Because everyone arrives from their journey, right? So everyone's coming from everything they've been through. So it may not necessarily have anything to do with you, why you're not being treated well. It can be more from the source of where it's coming from. But stand in your power. You choose to stand there. You choose to take it. And you can choose to respond instead of react. So I think to practice gathering up your thoughts and really responding with, you know, intention versus just like a reaction, but always speak your truth and know your value. And if it doesn't feel right in your gut, maybe it's time to move on or move to a different path.
Respond, don't react, speak your truth, know your value, all great nuggets there. Janelle.
Honestly, I have to piggyback off of Danielle because that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. You know, don't second guess yourself. Don't allow yourself to be bulldozed, and know your value, know why you're there. And also don't be afraid to make the change. And if it's not being seen, and if you've tried to have a productive conversation, you know, whether it's one-on-one or otherwise, and it's not changing, don't be afraid to do something else and to pivot and to change your course. But definitely don't second guess yourself. Don't let people make you think that oh, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this. I don't know. Just stay true to yourself and keep going.
Yeah, and I really like the acknowledgement of, hey, change your environment. In the end, you can do that, right? It's the power of choice. And so, great points. Thank you. Manon.
That was my point. If you do everything that you do and you know you're doing the right thing and you're successful and you're not appreciated for what you do, you're not the one that needs to change to fit into a mold. I always say you don't need to fit into a mold. You need to be true to yourself and be your real self.
Thanks so much, Manon. Manon, if our viewers and our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the one place they should go to find you?
On my website, manonrheaume33.com.
Thank you so much. Janelle.
I'm on LinkedIn, just Janelle Miller, and I'm also on Instagram, Janelle Kristen.
Great. Danielle.
Yep, Instagram would be the fastest. D. Lee Martin, DLEE Martin.
Great. And it's easy to find Danielle. She's doing a pose that I can't do. Danielle. So if you just think of all the poses Manuel Amezcua cannot do, then you know you have the right D. Lee Martin. So I want to thank our listeners. I want to thank the three of you. This was amazing. I know Desmond, Paul, and Javar from the last panel were going to tune in. I think, I don't know. I'm not going to call a winner. I'm sure Samantha will let them know. But this was unbelievable. So many great nuggets. Thank you for letting us know where we can stay in touch with you. Really excited to see the current chapter and the next chapter in all of your lives. And look, I want to remind folks, look, selfishly, there's so much great thought leadership out there. One of the most recent podcasts I was on, the Power Forward podcast by my man Justin White and Mateen Cleaves. That's right, Spartan Nation again, Mateen Cleaves. It blew my mind. I listen to these guys religiously. They're unbelievable. They're out of the great state of Michigan. That's a podcast worth listening to. Number two, if you're a female or a male and you're looking for great help from an unbelievable team of financial professionals, the Collective Financial Group is a group you should check out. Manon, you've been invaluable to them, as well as Gina Coleman, our Chief Sales Officer, and Samantha. So I'm super thankful. And lastly, I'll tell you again, that the space of the 1% of the 1%, it's a small ecosystem. We're really excited to have brought these three young ladies to you today. We're going to continue to bring you great content, thought leadership, and at the end of the day, just give you some nuggets that are hopefully quick takeaways you can implement right away and continue on your journey to getting better. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody, and have a blessed week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.